This is one of my favorites. This is the Dirty Jig Scott Canterbury flipping jig. Oh boy, look at that big one. Dang, 4-pounder on the old big jig right there. Dang, that's a nice one, real nice one. That bass that you just saw me catch was on this guy right here. This is a Dirty Jig Scott Canterbury flipping jig with a Berkeley meaty chunk on the back end. It's one of my favorite pairings, and it's not something that you would necessarily say goes together. It's a sapphire blue color with a green pumpkin mix, and it's one of my favorites. But I had a ton of comments regarding the video that I did on this that rolled out a while ago as to why I would ever put a blue sapphire chunk on the back of basically what's a watermelon / green pumpkin jig. And the reality is, it's because they're contrasting colors. Contrasting colors to me are critical to increasing your success on the water. Now for me, for a long time, I was all about matching your trailer to the main bait. So if you're fishing a spinnerbait, maybe a white spinnerbait, I'd put a white trailer on it. If it was a jig, I would try to match the color of the jig. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I do think there is something to be said for matching the colors or matching the hatch, because in most cases, if you're trying to match the forage, you're not necessarily going to have contrasting colors. Now, having said that, some bait fish, some crayfish, you can actually still have contrasting colors. And in most cases, you do have contrasting colors. So if I'm going to be matching my trailer to the main bait, it generally is already a mixture of colors. But you can definitely match the trailer to the bait, you know, regardless of whether it's a vibrating jig, a swim jig, a spinnerbait, a buzz bait. You can match everything if you want, but I still think it's very critical to have two colors. So maybe you've got a green back that fades into a shad color. Maybe you've got perch colors where you've got yellow mixed with like your greens. Maybe you've got your blacks with your whites. Some of the most, the oldest colors in fishing, I feel like, are your black back, silver sides. You don't get much more contrasting than that. And one of the reasons I do this now with everything is because the science says the bass prefer contrasting colors. They react better to baits that have a change in color. Now, to me, I think it has more to do not necessarily with matching the forage species, but creating movement. You know, when you mix two colors together, you see the movement better. And if you were to like watch a school of bait fish moving, it's pretty wild, because you'll actually have like waves of color. As the fish move in turn, you catch the reflection of light off of those bait fish schools in a different manner. Same thing goes with crayfish. If a crayfish is just sitting on the bottom, not moving, you're probably only going to see one color. But as soon as that crayfish moves, you start seeing the flash of its lighter underbelly. You start seeing the difference in movements. And to me, I think that's the key with your colors. When you have contrasting colors, every time you move your bait, it makes the colors change better. It makes the movement stand out better. And I think that does a really good job at mimicking the forage. And when the bass pick up on that movement, that's what triggers them to bite. Bass, I've said it so many times before, they're just like house cats. You can have a cat, you can put something in front of it, and they'll stare at it, they'll stalk it, they won't do much with it until you try to get it away. And the faster you do it, a lot of times, the more they react to it. And from that standpoint, bass are the same way. You know, it's all about trying to create that reaction strike. Sometimes that's in movement that you impart with your rod tip. Sometimes that's in movement that you create with your reel and in the speed at which you turn the handle. Sometimes that has to do with the movement of your bait. And it's just a matter of trying to create the idea that that bait is getting away from the bass, so you trigger the reaction strikes. And the studies that I've read all indicate that when you have colors that are different, that are creating that movement, you're going to have better reaction from bass than you will versus a solid color bait. Now, we all know how well a solid colored green pumpkin worm works, or a black and blue vibrating jig. I'm not saying you shouldn't stick with what works for you, but I think it's important to create some difference in color when pairing up baits. For me, I find I have greater success when I start to do something like this. You've got, I'm not going to say it's mismatched because I still think it works, but they're definitely not the same colors when you look at the main jig versus the trailer. So anytime you've got that color change that creates movement, you're gonna increase your bites, in my opinion. I think it's really worth trying. There have been lots of studies that have come out of Spirit Lake and Pure Fishing, and these are studies that go back a long ways. And they really, I think, suggest more than anything that the more you have that contrast in color, the more you get interest from the fish. And whether that's because they think it's getting a wave, whether it's because it's crazy looking and they just don't know what it is, I don't really have the answer for you other than the fact that they react better to it. So try it. Let me know in the comment section. Is that something that you guys have experienced as well out there, that when you're out fishing, you find that you do get more bites when you have colors that are not paired up perfectly? I would love to hear from you, because I know the science says it and I agree with it. And that's why in that video, this is the jig that I was fishing. This is a really good color pairing in my opinion. And it's one I've been doing for a long time. So thanks for watching. I hope that answers the viewer questions. If it does, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.